Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Thursday morning, February 24th. A much colder air mass has moved into the mid-Atlantic region. Yesterday afternoon, we had high temperatures near the 70-degree mark in D.C., Philadelphia, New York City. Temperatures tumbled in the overnight hours down to near freezing or even a little bit below freezing in some parts of the I-95 corridor region, maybe the mid-30s across the suburbs of D.C. as we speak. Not only did the temperatures tumble in the overnight hours, but indicative of kind of an Arctic air mass at dew points, the overall measure of moisture in the atmosphere dropped significantly. I saw the latest dew point, for example, at Central Park down to 12 degrees, in the teens in the Philadelphia metro region. This is an important player because the combination of low-level, cold, dense air with the dryness of the air will lead to an increased chance of some frozen precipitation. Indeed, it looks like there'll be an ice buildup in many areas later on tonight, and it will more than likely have a negative impact on the Friday morning commute, especially let's say the Philadelphia suburbs up to New York City, but even down in the northern and western suburbs of D.C. We'll have to watch out for an impact on the early morning Friday commute. The evening commute this evening, Thursday evening, should not be a problem. We'll kind of go into the reasons as to why I don't expect that will be a problem. What we're looking at is a classic cold air damming situation, and just wanted to point out before we get into exactly what cold air damming is, we have a video explaining in detail cold air damming out there on our Arcfield Weather Meteorology 101 page. You can see right here, and here is a video if anybody is really interested in getting more details on this phenomenon known as cold air damming. It's a important phenomenon for anybody living in the mid-Atlantic or the northeastern part of the nation. Again, there's a video right there on our Meteorology 101 page. Well, let's take a look at the current surface pressure analysis here. This is from a NOAA mesoscale analysis website, and I want to just kind of go over the cold air damming situation that we have now in the northeastern part of the nation. First of all, it's characterized by strong high pressure up to the north of the mid-Atlantic region, up to the north of the northeastern part of the nation, usually across southeastern Canada. Winds flow clockwise around highs. That is pushing colder air, and in the overnight hours that colder air just moved from southeastern Canada down east of the Appalachians all the way down into the southern mid-Atlantic region. Again, last hour it was down to the upper 20s in New York City, the near freezing across the Philadelphia metro region, down in the low to mid 30s in and around the DC metro region. You often see an isobar pattern. Isobars are lines of equal pressure that kind of show this kinkiness here. We refer to it as in a cold air damming situation. And notice here on the other side of the Appalachians, kind of the reverse isobar pattern. And in this region here, you have warmer air that can make an advance even at the lower levels of the atmosphere. But down here in the lower levels of the atmosphere, at ground level, you have this low-level, cold, dense air, and that dense characteristic is a key. It is hard to dislodge. If you get warmer air that rides up and over it, it oftentimes will not give up its ground, and that leads to a potential for an icing situation, again with the low-level, cold air at or below freezing, but warming in the upper part of the atmosphere. Even just a thin layer of above freezing air can lead to an icing event. Indeed, that looks like that is in the offing for much of the mid-Atlantic region later tonight. I expect the area from, let's say, northern Maryland and then across much of Pennsylvania, especially southern and central Pennsylvania, there can be an ice buildup, and even a significant ice buildup in some spots, perhaps up to a quarter inch in some of the suburbs of Philadelphia, for example, to the north and west there. And we'll look at some of the model outputs for freezing rain with this classic cold air damming setup. Again, low-level Arctic air will be overrun by some warmer air. Now, that warmer air can make inroads across places like West Virginia and even southwestern Pennsylvania. They're liable to easily go up above freezing during this event later on today into tonight, but going above freezing will be very, very difficult in the suburban areas to the north and west of D.C. and especially in and around Philly and in and around New York, because this high pressure system is going to hold its ground. In addition, and we'll see this in a model, oftentimes you have low pressure that tends to develop just off the mid-Atlantic coastline in a cold air damming situation. And because winds flow counterclockwise around lows, that actually helps to maintain that cold air in the lower levels of the atmosphere. And all of this leading to a potential ice buildup overnight tonight into early Friday for much of the mid-Atlantic region. Well, I've mentioned the potential for an ice buildup, and just want to show out a few of the models here and what they're depicting for potential for the total accumulated freezing rain. This is over the next 24 hours or so. This is the NAM model, which has a pretty good handle, I think, on the situation here, and it depicts some accumulated freezing rain all the way down to the D.C. metro region, especially the far northern suburbs, all the way across southeastern Pennsylvania into the New York City metro region. Now, in New York City and some interior sections of northwestern New Jersey, the precipitation early tonight could start as accumulating snow, quite likely to start as accumulating snow up there, and that may accumulate up to a couple inches or so, maybe even a few inches or so in the New York City metro region, for example, before an ultimate change over to sleet and freezing rain. The real area of concern for me is anywhere from northern Maryland across southern and central Pennsylvania. Let's take a look at a couple of, for an ice buildup. Let's take a look at a couple other model forecast maps. This is the GFS model, and look at some of these totals here. Half an inch of ice in the overnight hours in east central Pennsylvania, down across Berks County into south central Pennsylvania, even some decent amounts across the northern and western suburbs of Philadelphia and all the way down to northern Maryland. Let's now take a look at the Canadian model. And this is kind of scary. This is the most bullish of all, the most ominous of all. This has some significant ice buildup. I don't know if I buy this solution, but it certainly sends a red flag. I do believe that this is the area of greatest concern for ice buildup. Again, far northern Maryland into southern and central Pennsylvania, and if some of these results actually come true, that could unfortunately result in some power outages. The good news here is we don't have leaves yet on the trees. That would cause a bigger concern in terms of power outages and limbs breaking off with the weight of the ice buildup. But even without the leaves, any kind of a buildup on this order here would certainly raise the threat for some power outages, again, especially across southern and central Pennsylvania all the way down to northern Maryland. Well, let's now walk through the 0Z run of the NAM model. This is the 12-kilometer version of the NAM model, the higher resolution, the 12-kilometer resolution version of the NAM model. First of all, I want to point out here that we have kind of a couple of waves of precipitation coming. There's one wave coming today. Really, it's begun already in the western suburbs of D.C. with some light rain at the moment here, 35 degrees at Dulles, so it's still a little bit above freezing in that area. There'll be certainly some scattered, on the lighter side, mixed precipitation during the day, primarily to the south of the Pennsylvania-Maryland border with that initial wave of precipitation, maybe even then a lull in any precipitation later this afternoon into the early part of the evening. Then a lot of the action really begins with an expanding and an intensifying precipitation shield early tonight, expanding north of the Pennsylvania-Maryland border and becoming heavier early to mid-evening hours here. So again, kind of two waves of precipitation, one during the day today, then a lull in the action, and then the real action begins early tonight and continues into early Friday. So let's move forward here. Again, we talked about the cold air damming situation. This is the forecast map from the 0Z run of the NAM for right now, early this morning. Here's your strong high pressure system right here, southeastern Canada. Winds north to northeast, funneling cold, low-level Arctic dense air down across the eastern side of the Appalachian Mountains. Here's your isobar pattern that has kind of this trough showing up here in the cold air damming situation on the east side of the Appalachians. And again, those dew points, also an important factor here, which will lead to some evaporative cooling. New York City, again, right now at 12 dew point, down in the middle teens across southeastern Pennsylvania. And the cold advection that began in the overnight hours is continuing right now. So it's 35, 36 degrees right now in Dulles. Don't be surprised, temperatures continue to drop a little bit over the next few hours, as will the dew point. So let's now move forward with this particular model. Watch what happens. Again, you have a lot of colors on the map here. Purple represents some sleet, the blue, a little bit of snow, and of course the green and yellows, plain rain above freezing rain. Mixed precipitation during the day across the DC metro region. It could be in any form. Plain rain for a little while longer, then sleet, maybe even some snow mixing in. Mixed precipitation during the day. And again, most of this first wave stays south of the Pennsylvania-Maryland border. But watch for some sleet later on today in the DC metro region. Then I expect kind of a lull in the action here. This is now mid to late afternoon hours. Don't be surprised if all of a sudden any mixed precip during the morning and midday hours actually slackens to little or no precipitation late in the afternoon. And then the real action begins later on this evening. This is the 7 p.m. forecast map. So first of all, the evening commute should be okay. I think for the most part, the Thursday evening commute, even in the DC area, should be okay. But here comes more intense precipitation, and it intensifies and expands to the north and east later on this evening. This is the 9 p.m. forecast map. All kinds of colors here. Some plain rain well to the south and east of DC, but in DC, freezing rain and sleet. The purple representing sleet, the pink freezing rain. Just now moving into southeastern Pennsylvania, and here we go by later on this evening. Freezing rain in and around the suburbs of DC, maybe even still into the metro region, and some freezing rain and sleet throughout much of southern and central Pennsylvania. And again, there can be an onset of snow just to the north and west of New York City, maybe even in the metro region itself, maybe even a couple of inches of snow at the onset. Certainly some accumulating snow across northeastern Pennsylvania. This is the 1 a.m. forecast map. Freezing rain at this time now. Southern Pennsylvania, northern Maryland. Most likely plain rain along the coastal sections of New Jersey, and accumulating snow breaking out across upstate New York. And here we go all the way into the late night hours. Still some freezing rain hanging on in the northern and western suburbs of Philadelphia. That's why I believe the morning commute in the suburbs of Philadelphia could be an icy mess tomorrow. I think temperatures, certainly Pottstown, Downingtown, maybe Westchester, will be hovering near the freezing mark early tomorrow morning. So watch out for some icy spots as late as the Friday morning commute to the north and west of Philadelphia, and certainly in and around New York City, snow, sleet, and icy mess for the Friday morning commute. Even in the northern and western suburbs of DC, there may be temperatures still hovering not far from the freezing mark, let's say up across Frederick, Maryland, certainly by early tomorrow morning. Watch out for some slippery spots. Now, in the overnight hours, south of the Pennsylvania-Maryland border, I believe the precipitation will become spotty and lighter. This main wave pushes to the north of the Pennsylvania-Maryland border by the late evening, midnight hour, for example. So in the overnight hours, only some patchy freezing drizzle, let's say, across the suburbs of DC. Let's go out a little bit farther in time, and here we go. By the time we get to the latter part of the morning, Temperatures, let's say in the city of Philadelphia, probably jumping above the freezing mark, so conditions will improve later on tomorrow morning. Again, I am concerned for some icy patches on untreated surfaces for the early morning commute, especially in the suburbs to the north and west of Philadelphia, maybe the far northern western suburbs of D.C., and throughout the New York City metro region. It all tends to wind down by midday hours in the D.C., Philadelphia, New York City corridor, and temperatures actually later tomorrow will jump well above freezing, maybe to near 50 degrees in D.C. and mid-40s, let's say, in Philadelphia and New York City later in the day tomorrow. But we have to get to that point, and we'll have an icy buildup in many areas later on tonight, going into the early morning hours on Friday, especially northern Maryland and southern and central Pennsylvania, where there can be some significant ice buildup in some spots later on tonight, going into the commute time on Friday. Again, this evening's commute should be okay for the most part. That's it for now. For ArcfieldWeather.com, I'm meteorologist